Yes.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Veena ma'am.
Okay. Fine. Don't bother. Aniket will take care.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Bye.
You can record, Paniji?
Yes, it's already started.
It's already started.
It's already started recording.
Okay.
Anyway, later on they'll do some editing and all if necessary.
Right.
We'll wait for. We'll start exactly at 10:35.
Yes.
Okay. And
Sure.
I'll do the universal prayer, school prayer.
Yeah. And who's here to sing?
If somebody is there, we will see. Otherwise, I'll do it. No problem.
I see Krishnamurti there.
No, that is K.C. Krishnamurti.
He can sing Gayatri Mantra.
Singing later on because of the time constraint.
Gayatri Mantra.
The Gayatri Mantra, normally who does it?
She's not here.
We'll see. We'll wait for.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll do it. No problem.
Okay, then you do it. Then Krishna Paniji is doing. All right. Thank you.
Okay. We'll start in 2 minutes. Today is incidentally Gita Jayanti.
I know, very, very auspicious day today for us to start also 11th chapter. Just
Yes.
finished a very, very important chapter.
Right.
ಗೊತ್ತು ಕನ್ವರ್ಸೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ?
In Delhi, I mean in Hyderabad.
Hyderabad, yeah, 12, 13 degrees.
Oh yeah, my God.
Nights are cold. Day doesn't exceed 28, 29.
Acha, okay. I think in Bangalore we are also similar, but we've got lesser temperature in the day.
Okay. Yeah, it's normally 23, 24 around that.
Yeah, that's right. I'm getting the temperature. It's 22 right now.
Yeah.
It's 22.
One minute. Disturbance.
Okay, it's 10, right?
Yes.
Suprabhat.
Yes,
and very, very happy Gita Jayanti to everybody today. It's very auspicious. So it's wonderful that both coincide, our class as well as that Jayanti day is coincided. Can we have please? Somebody is unmuted.
Yeah, I'll try to mute them.
Okay. No, I think they're all muted. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start with the school prayer.
Yeah, Krishna Panji will do the school prayer and he'll do the Gayatri Mantra.
O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhurbhuvaswah. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvaswah. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvaswah. Om तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। A very warm welcome to all the participants. Today is a very auspicious day. Today is Vaikuntha Ekadashi. It is also the Gita Jayanti. And this month, Margashirsha, is a very auspicious month. Also, in the solar calendar, we call it as the Dhanurmasa. And in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, we have seen Sri Krishna saying that Masanam Margashirshoham. He says, among the months, I am the Margasirsha. I am this particular month called as Margasirsha. So it is, and a very, I wouldn't really say coincident, but it is, I think, divine providence that today being Ekadashi, we are also starting the Ekadasha Adhyaya, the 11th Adhyaya. The 11th Adhyaya is the Ekadasha Adhyaya. So it's a very auspicious occasion. And it was on this day, more than, I think, 5,000 years ago, on the battle of Kurukshetra, Sri Krishna gave to the world the Bhagavad Gita. So I request Binaji to read the first two verses of the 2 or 3, I think 3 verses of the 11th chapter, and also the translation of it by Sri Aurobindo. You have to unmute yourself.
Krishnapani ji, may I request you to read the Sanskrit part and I will read the translations.
Okay. Arjuna Uvacha Madanugrahaya Paramam Guhyam Adhyatma Sangitam Yatvayoktam Vachastena Mohoyam Vigato Mama Bhavapyayau hi bhutanam shrutau vistarasho maya Tvattah Kamarapatraksha Mahatmyamapi Avyayam Evametad Yathatha Tvamatmanam Parameshwara Drashtumichhami Te Rupamaishwaram Purushottama.
Okay, the translation for these 3 shlokas is the first one. Arjuna said, "Gone is the delusion of mind by the supreme and secret word known as Adhyatma, spiritual truth and principle, spoken by thee out of benignity for me." Second shloka. About origination and dissolution of the existences also have I heard in detail from thee, O lotus-eyed, and also about the greatness imperishable. 3. Shloka 3. Verily is all this as thou thyself hast declared, O Supreme Lord. I now wish to see thy divine form, O Purushottama.
You can read the commentary also, Binaji.
There's a commentary is after 8. Should I read that?
After 8?
After 8. There's no commentary till
Okay. Then we will leave it.
Okay.
We will discuss the subject as such.
Yeah.
Here, in the very first verse, what is important to note is Arjuna unequivocally declaring that he is free from delusion, that his delusion has completely gone. This is a basic qualification. Unless you have this basic qualification of coming out of delusion, you cannot see anything of the divinity. So he has to proclaim his eligibility so that he can be shown the cosmic form, Vishwarupa. So he is very clearly saying that I have heard all your words. You have spoken of that supreme esoteric knowledge. You have given the what is called as the Adhyatma Vidya. In the 10th chapter, in one of the verses, I think it is the 32nd verse, where Sri Krishna says that among all the Vidyas, I am the Adhyatma Vidya, I am the Vidya of the self. I am not translating the word Vidya purposely, because Vidya is not knowledge per se. Knowledge is mental and conceptual. Vidya here means learning in the present. And it is something what one would call as present continuous. It's something present continuous. It's not something which can be learned, acquired, and stored. One has to be in that state of consciousness and as a continuum. Then only the self reveals itself. That's why he says, Guhyam Adhyatma Sangitam. It is Guhyam. It is esoteric. It is secret. And Adhyatma Sangitam. It is denoted by the term Adhyatma, meaning it is transcendental learning of the self. Transcendental learning of the self. That is what is important. And having heard your words, having heard your discourse, we have seen that at the beginning of the 9th chapter, Sri Krishna says that I am revealing more and more secret to you, the royal secret and the royal wisdom, because you are now taking delight in it. Then you asked me about my divine manifestations, which I have verbally revealed to you in the 10th chapter. Now he is through that process, what has happened is, he is now free of delusion. All his delusion has gone. We have seen that delusion is the biggest hurdle and the starting point of ignorance or avidya. We are all deluded. We are all in a deluded state. Let us be very, very clear about what we are. We are deluded. The fact, it's a fact. It is not a question of debate or discussion. We can see very well through our senses, through our mind, through our knowledge, through our experiences, and through our whole, being. Delusion is a consequence of limitation. Let us not take it as something negative. It is not somebody saying that you are deluded or somebody is abusing you or saying something. No, it's not that. It's a fact. It's a fact is whenever you are operating in limitation, it means that you are in a state of delusion because you can't see the whole thing. You can only see something very limited, something very partial, and in a very fragmentary manner. So these three elements make the whole experience, human experience at its present level of consciousness, as what is called as delusion. And what is the consequence of delusion? The consequence of delusion is sorrow and suffering. The consequence of limitation is delusion. Limitation is traditionally they call it as ignorance. Ignorance may appear to be again a negative term, but it's not that. Ignorance means that you don't know. And there is a deeper version of it whereby you don't know that you don't know. It's a deeper level of delusion. So it is to be understood in the right perspective. And unless one comes out of delusion, one cannot overcome or get rid of sorrow and suffering. So that's why shoka and moha, these are two very important terms in the Bhagavad Gita, which tell us about the reality of the manifested world. Unfortunately, sometimes we may consider this as a pessimistic view, but it is not a pessimistic view. It is a very realistic view. Not that there are no moments or occasions of pleasure, happiness, and things like that. But we also know that the seeking of pleasure and seeking of happiness or something of that nature indicates that it lacks in us. It is not there in us. Why do I seek something which I already have? I would not do it, isn't it? If I'm already happy like a child, why would I go after things or objects or relationships or ideas and concepts and beliefs and things like that? So a very realistic view is that there seems to be a serious inadequacy in us, which is always causing some kind of sorrow and suffering, which is a consequence of delusion, which in turn is a consequence of limitation and ignorance. However vast the manifested universe may be, the Indic perspective is very clear that it is by definition limited. So Arjuna very clearly says to Sri Krishna that mohoyam vigato mama. My delusion has gone. So this is an important thing. Then he goes on to say that I have also heard from you at great length. In a very detailed manner, you have explained to me about the birth and dissolution of the whole creation, of all beings. Bhava and apyaya. Bhava means the emergence. the emergence of manifestation with all its beings. Apyaya means the dissolution or merger of what has emerged. These two aspects also, O Sri Krishna, you have given to me in great elaboration, Vistarashaha. And I have also seen and heard from you about your own immutable grandeur. Mahatmyam avyayam. Mahatmya means your greatness, your excellence, your grandeur. And what is it? It is avyaya. It is something immutable. This is another principle one has to recognize through one's own observation, through one's own continuous observation, not necessarily a very deep observation. In fact, an ordinary observation also reveals to us that everything in manifestation is impermanent. Everything in manifestation is changing. Everything in manifestation is operating within the spatio-temporal framework. And therefore, we are stuck in time. And being stuck in time means always operating in uncertainty. Because the future is unknown. The future can't be predicted, can't be anticipated. And we are unprepared for it. So there is a great amount of uncertainty. And that has been demonstrated in 2020. How nobody can anticipate what is going to happen. The COVID-19, this virus, is a demonstration of that element of uncertainty, that element of something beyond human comprehension, where one cannot predict, one cannot anticipate. Even though people might have predicted, there are some videos which say that somebody said in 2015 that the next thing could be bio war, or somebody said that virus may come or something else may come. But has it in any way really impacted us, and were we prepared for it? We were absolutely not prepared for it. We most of us are unwilling to accept it also. And even today that atmosphere pervades because of the uncertainty. I don't know what to do, what not to do. A million people have advised a million things. Because nobody knows what is it that's really going to work. So when you know through your own observation that impermanence, change, and uncertainty are the lot of humanity. So that's why, if you remember, some time back I said, all of us are in ICU. ICU stands for impermanence, change, and uncertainty. Or in other terms, intensive care units from a medical point of view. So we are all in ICU. We live in that, and it is something which cannot be avoided, because you have not come in contact with that which is eternal, that which is immutable, that which is immeasurable. Everything in the spatio-temporal framework is measurable. Measure is the reality for us. And very beautifully, the term Maya comes from the root Ma, which means measurable. That which is measurable. Ma means to measure. Meya means measurable. Prameya also means measurable. That which can be known. That is the reason why Western thinkers and philosophers said that what cannot be measured cannot be real from a worldly point of view. But the Indic perspective has the approach is diametrically opposite. They said what can be measured is an illusion, and only what cannot be measured be the reality. Anything you can measure means it is limited. Whether it is a nanometer or a million kilometers, it is still measurable. So Arjuna says that I have known the grandeur of your immutability through your discourse. Tattah Kamarapatraksha Mahatmyapapi Chavyayam. I have come to that. I have been given a comprehensive description of the whole system where you have spoken about the emergence and merger of all manifestation. And you also have revealed to me through words, verbally, your greatness, which is immutable. This is the second verse. Then he comes to the third verse and says, he calls him as Parameshwara and Purushottama. He uses these two terms by addressing Sri Krishna. Parameshwara means you are the Supreme Lord. Purushottama means you are the highest spirit. You are the Purusha doesn't mean a person here. It is a personification of that spirit. And he says, you have described about yourself also extensively. But I would like to see you in your lordly form, in your great manifested form. See, the most important faculty or sense is the sense of sight, isn't it? However, much the other faculties or senses are important, but when it comes to identifying the most important faculty, human faculty or sense is the sense of sight. That's why Sarvendriyanam Nayanam Pradhanam. Among all the Indriyas, the eyes are the most important. And we have that saying in English also that seeing is believing. Now Arjuna says that I have heard so much, but all that is verbal knowledge or verbal discourse which you have given. I'm not really satisfied with it. I would like to see you. Drashtumichhami. I wish to see you. Because sight gives several dimensions to what we see. It opens several dimensions. And in fact, even when somebody is explaining a concept and you understand it, automatically what comes out of us is, yeah, I see. It's not that you are visually seeing the concept, but you are able to mentally perceive that concept. So physical and mental perception both are sights. That is the beauty of the ancient Indian philosophical traditions, because all philosophies, all schools of thought are called as darshanas. Darshana means a vision. So the Indian schools of philosophy are called as the darshanas, Shat Darshanas. Mimamsa and Vedanta, Nyaya and Vaisheshika, Sankhya and Yoga, these 6 schools of philosophy are called as darshanas because they provide you with a grand vision in their own terms of what is manifest and what is beyond manifestation also. So he expresses a desire and says, I want to see. Though you have told me in such great detail, and I have heard about it, I want to see. Aishwaram, Rupam Aishwaram. Rupam means form. Aishwaram means Ishvara Bhava. The Ishvara means that which rules over everything. That which is the essence and the basis for manifestation. Aishwaram, the bhava or the sense of that lordliness, sense of that immensity. And very interestingly, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the commentary of Sri Adi Shankara, whenever the term Ishvara or Aishwaram is used, he talks about 6 dimensions or 6 aspects which denote what Aishwaram is. He says, Jnana, Aishwarya, Bala, Shakti, Virya, Tejas. These 6 are included in that. And what are these 6? One is Jnana. Jnana is learning, realization, or I would rather use the term awareness. Unfortunately, there is a tendency to translate it as knowledge. But knowledge is something concerned only with the senses and very limited. Jnana denotes a sense of awareness, a sense of holistic perception. Jnana. Then Aishwarya. Aishwarya, as I said, that sense of dominance and ruling over it, or being in power. It's not in the negative sense or from a worldly point of view. It is what I think a better term would be what in the Christian theology we find it as Almighty. Almighty. And then the third is Bala.
So can we take grandeur for Aishwarya? Grandeur?
No, I would not like to use the term grandeur. Grandeur is excellence, or what in other context called it as Mahatmya.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'm just trying to equate it with uh, the potential for being all omnipotent, all powerful. What we call it as the Almighty.
Ishvara,
That is the Ishvara
Ishvara,
Bhava only. That is the term used. Ishvarasya Bhavaha Aishwaryam. Aishwarya, the term Aishwarya is used from that sense, in that sense only. We are using the same word. We are trying to explain the term Aishwaryam. In English, I am trying to explain the term Aishwaryam, which means almighty or all powerful. Then Bala. Bala is Shakti. Bala is strength in English. Bala is strength, whereas Shakti is energy or vigor. Without Shakti, there cannot be Bala. Bala is a manifestation of energy in the form of strength. So that is Bala and Shakti. And then Virya. Virya is that vitality. The term Virya comes from Veera. Veera means a hero. Veera means one who is valiant. That which flows from that great sense of confidence of being able to achieve anything. That is the Virya. And then finally Tejas. Tejas is effulgent, the glory, something which is blazing, something which is so bright and shining and effulgent. So he uses these 6 terms. He says, Jnana Aishwarya Bala Shakti Virya Tejobhihi Sampannam Aishwaram Vaishnavam Rupam. It is a form of Vishnu. Vishnu means all pervading. The term Vishnu means all pervading. So he says, Arjuna is asking for that Rupam Aishwaram. I want to see that form, O Purushottama. I want to see that form. That's what he declares. And then lastly, we have done the 3 verses. We can go to the 4th verse, which is the for last of the verses of what Arjuna addresses. And there is a comment from Pranaya. Can we equate the word Aishwarya with glory? No, I have used it in a, see, Tejas is glory. Aishwarya, I would say, it is all powerful or almighty or omnipotence would be a better word. And the derivative meaning of Aishwarya is wealth. Wealth in any form is Aishwarya, not necessarily in monetary terms, but any wealth gives you that sense of potency. Ishwarasya bhavaha is Aishwarya. So, Pranayji, I would rather use these 2 terms. See, they are not exact equivalent translations in English, but we are trying to find out words which are very close to it. One is, as I said, power or that sense of omnipotence and almighty nature, which is Aishwaram, Aishwarya. And Tejas is something which is effulgent, which is, brightly burning. which is a symbol of the sunlight. The sun is a physical symbol of that effulgence, something which is glowing. So that is the term. Okay.
Paniji?
Yes.
This in Swami Chinmayanandaji's, he
Hmm.
says Ishvara, the God principle in our Shastras, is expressed as omnipotence, infinite wisdom, strength, virtue, detachment, and splendor.
Yeah. He has given a different translation to these terms. Yes. Splendor is another term for Tejas.
Oh, for
Tejas.
Tejas. For Tejas, yeah. Right, okay.
Aishwarya is a potency, that omnipotent, which he has used the term, which I have also preferred.
Yes, yes. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we use that word Purusha for Aishwarya?
No. Please don't confuse. Please don't confuse with all these terms. Don't get confused, first of all, because see, Madam Manjula ji, Purusha is a technical term in Sankhya, which is borrowed in Vedanta. When we have so many other terms, why bring in a new Sanskrit term to describe something else?
Okay.
Purusha and Prakriti are technical terms in both Sankhya and Vedanta. That is the reason why when you see, it's more important to grasp the idea behind it rather than try to translate it. Don't try to understand through translation. Try to understand through the verbal process that is being explained. That is why I used to very jocularly sometimes in the classes in the School of Ancient Wisdom, I would request, sir, one fool like me is talking. He is talking elaborately. I know that what I am talking is, some of it I don't myself may grasp. So adding to that another confusion by adding a few more sentences is not going to make it clear. Try to intuitively grasp this, please. Intuitively grasp it. See, when you say Almighty, it should give you a tremendous sense of an energy and potence. You know, it's not, these words also are not random. When you say Almighty, that sense of potency, that sense of great power also comes out through that word. Hold on to that energy and that sense of the word rather than the word itself. So we need to, let us not add more and more words to our understanding. I am forced to use words because that's the only means of communication. So kindly grasp the sense of it. Because unless you know what is jnana, awareness, a sense of alertness, a sense of perception. So if I simply translate it as knowledge or okay, be aware, what be aware? If you're sitting here, are we aware of everything around us? Including listening to the speaker, including watching the speaker, including the what is read out of the text. Can we be aware of the whole being? That is jnana. So when I talk about Aishwarya, it means that tremendous sense of power, the omnipotence, then the great sense of strength in a manifested form. And when somebody says strength, imagine a huge machine which is able to move a mountain is able to lift, say, 20 or 30 tons of some material. How much strength is required for that? You know, I don't know if you have seen in the coal mines, in open coal mines, there's a huge machine, huge in the sense you can't even imagine. It's like a 8 or 10 storied building, and it has a boom of this thing, which is 200-300 meters, and at one stroke it lifts about 8 to 10 tons of coal, and it is operated through at least 12,000 horsepower motors are running in that. If you are in that chamber, you can actually feel the vibrations of that running of that machine. Those motors, when they are operating, it really physically hits you. You can't really see anything, but it's physically hitting you through vibrations. So we need to visualize that. Each of these terms need to be visualized. In all the traditions, spiritual traditions, a great importance is given to visualization. If we close our eyes, can you, with the same kind of vividness and clarity, visualize things? That's a great practice in Buddhism. Even in the Indian traditions, we have this practice where things could be much more clear through an inner vision than an outer vision. But unfortunately, for most of us, it is the other way around. When I open my eyes, things appear to be more clear and vivid and concrete. But when you close your eyes, you can visualize the same thing with much more vividity and clarity. So that is the point. That is the point when it's not for the heck of it that Adi Shankara gives these 6 terms to talk about, to tell us about Aishwaram. Strength, energy, that sense of great sense of confidence of achieving something. That's what his heroism is. Virya and Tejas. See, we can't stand for a few minutes close to something which is brightly burning, isn't it? We can feel the impact of that heat. Now imagine that in manifold terms. In this chapter itself, Arjuna says, when I am seeing your cosmic form, it's as though 1,000 suns have suddenly come up, and then they are, the whole firmament is effulgent with 1,000 suns. So in that sense, we need to absorb these things. Please, I hope you take my words in the right spirit, because
I got it, sir.
that sense will have that immensity. That sense of immensity should pervade our being. The vastness of it. The term Vishnu means vastness. It is personified for several reasons in symbols and other things, but the primary meaning of it is vastness. Vastness. So, and now let's come to the 4th verse, please, of Arjuna. Manyase yadi tat chakyam maya drashtumiti prabho yogeshwara tato me tvam दर्शयात्मनम् अव्ययम्. Darshayatmanam avyayam. Sorry, there's some. I'll just switch on the light. Darshaya atmanam avyayam.
The translation,
Yes.
If thou deemest, O Lord, that can be seen by me, then do thou, O Yogeshwara, master of yoga, show me thy imperishable self.
Atmanam avyayam. That's what he's saying. And here we are able to see a sense of humility. He says, if you think that I am eligible to see, then kindly show me your immutable self. Atmanam avyayam. And he uses two terms here to address Sri Krishna. He uses two terms here to address Sri Krishna. One is Prabhu. Prabhu means again Lord. Okay. The second term is Yogeshwara. This is a very, very important term in the Bhagavad Gita. In the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita also the same thing is used. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara. So the idea is that Sri Krishna is essentially a Yogeshwara. He is the master of yoga. He is the ultimate master of all yoga. If you remember, I discussed this earlier also, that every chapter is called as a yoga. Every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called as a yoga, including the yoga of sorrow, Vishada Yoga. The first chapter itself is the yoga of sorrow. So everything is a yoga. That means a suitable term which we can use and which is the favorite of Sri Aurobindo, especially when we are discussing the Bhagavad Gita in the light of Sri Aurobindo's commentary and discussion. He is very fond of this term yoga, which he has translated it as integral. And in fact, he coined the term integral yoga also. The yoga of yogas. Yoga comes from the root yuj, to join, to integrate. So he is the master of all integration. Because ultimately, it is only that unity and that infinity which is there, which has no second, Advitiya. So you see, the reason for addressing him as Yogeshwara is Arjuna has recognized the fact that he is the ultimate master of everything, both the manifest and the unmanifest, and he is that integral truth of both the unmanifest and the manifest. In some other context, Adi Shankara uses the term avyaktad avyaktaha. In the Bhagavad Gita itself, I don't remember readily the words. He says avyaktad. He is the unmanifest behind the unmanifest. The unmanifest behind the unmanifest. So that is the idea. How you need to approach a master is to know some aspect of his reality, that he is the Lord and the Master, Prabhu and Yogeshwara. Unless you recognize that, there won't be that element of reverence, that element of devotion, the element of dedication, the element of the sacredness. The difference between all worldly learning and the transcendental learning is this. One can be a very arrogant mathematician. One can be a very jealous or envious physicist, very great physicist. You're not questioning his ability for his subject. One can be a very foolish astronomer. But one can never be a true devotee in the quest of truth with these qualities. You can approach it only through that great sense of humility, great sense of reverence, and a great sense of sacredness. That is the reason why he is a with that great sense of humility and recognition of the greatness of Sri Krishna, that Arjuna is asking him that if you think I am eligible, if you consider me as capable or truly I am qualified, then, O Lord and Master of Yoga, please reveal to me your immutable self. That is the approach that is required. See, every verse of the Bhagavad Gita has layers and layers of meaning. And it has been endorsed and validated by some of the greatest thinkers and commentators and speakers on the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever they pick up the book, they find a new meaning, a new dimension. Whenever they read a verse, they find a new thing. In fact, this morning also, when I was preparing for this talk, I noted down points which I had missed earlier from the same verses. I had to make some additional notes. I have marked these things here. The reason is this. The reason is that it gives you a different dimension when you are reading it a second time or a third time or a fourth time or even a nth time. You will find a different dimension to it because your understanding is at different layers. The word meaning, the inner meaning, the hidden meaning, the esoteric meaning. Then somewhere a flash would come and you will come directly face to face with that reality, which is the Paramartha, which is the ultimate truth or ultimate meaning of it. Till such time, you will find shades and dimensions and aspects of that reality. So this is the dimension when he says Manyase yadi tat shakyam. If you think it is possible, if you otherwise think that I am eligible and it is possible through me, and that I can truly see or visualize it, then, O Lord and Master of Yoga, kindly reveal to me or show me thy true self, which is immutable, avyayam. Atmanam avyayam. Show me that. That should be our approach always. Whenever it comes to any subject which has a transcendental dimension to it, you will not come to it unless with this approach of reverence and sacredness is missing. If that is missing, one cannot come to it. As I mentioned earlier, see, the difference between worldly knowledge and transcendental wisdom is that a mathematician learning mathematics does not become mathematics himself. A physicist doesn't become physics. But a knower of the ultimate truth himself becomes the ultimate truth. That is the beauty of it, and that is the secret of it. Brahmaiva Brahmavid Bhavati. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. Brahmavid, the knower of the Brahman, becomes the Brahman. So that the duality is no longer valid. The duality drops and you become one with it. That is the secret of mundane knowledge and transcendental knowledge, or transcendental learning or wisdom. That's the reason why it is classified as aparavidya. All worldly knowledge, all worldly learning is called as aparavidya, of the lower type. The true learning of the transcendent nature of reality is called as paravidya. The Upanishads very beautifully put it. Dve vidye veditavye paracha aparacha iva. There are two kinds of vidya, two kinds of learnings. And they had the audacity and the courage and the conviction to say that the Vedas are worldly knowledge. They are only worldly learning. No other culture or no other tradition can proclaim this. That what is considered to be the most sacred scripture, from a transcendental point of view, still falls in the mundane category only. However revealed, however the source of that scripture, however much it may be called as a revelation, it's only a revelation. See, Annie Besant used to say that no truth is true unless it is true to you. The truth has to be true to me. If it is not true to me, it is only a mere information, a mere piece of information, and not anything beyond it. So that is the beauty one has to recognize here. So that is the dimension which we are talking about, and with that sense of great sense of humility and recognizing the divinity and the sacredness of that master of all yoga, that Arjuna approaches Sri Krishna to reveal his cosmic form. So it's already 11:36. We will stop here, and if there are any points for discussion, I welcome. If anybody would like to raise any point, I would be, we can discuss it.
The only point and a larger aspect is this chapter is not usually given in a public discourse like other chapters.
Is not?
I mean, normally chapter 11, you don't hear much on public discourse.
Yeah, that is, I don't know background what exactly is the thing, but what happens here is it is descriptive in nature. It is descriptive, and the description per se cannot represent reality, isn't it? It is description per se, and that description has limited meaning unless one comes to that truth. The vision which Arjuna had, we did not have it. So therefore, what is real to him is only description to us. So the description cannot really represent the described. So that is the point. And even the commentators like Adi Shankara have given very brief commentaries only on this. Have not gone into elaborate commentaries on this. But in the essays on the Gita, on this particular chapter, Sri Aurobindo has brought about.
Yeah, I have read both of them. I read both of them.
Yeah. No, what I am trying to say is Sri Aurobindo brings in the dimension of calling this cosmic form a representation of the time as the destroyer. He calls the chapter itself as the vision of the world spirit, time the destroyer. We'll come to it when I think it is in verse number somewhere later, much later. In this he comes to that idea of the destructor of time. I think it is verse number 32, where he says, Kalosmi, Lokakshaya Krit Prabhu. So that is
Jnaneshwar has written 600 verses on this chapter.
Yeah. So, and however much it may be written, it is still description only. It is still description unless we
Use imagination.
Yeah. And no. My limited point is unless you internalize it, the description remains for description only.
That is important. Internally.
That is important. That's the point I am trying to make. Yeah, Binaji, you have something? You wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying that, we have to be ready, and it's instantaneous, I mean, seeing the form is only when we are absolutely ready to see it,
Yes.
and then it's just instantaneous. There's no process or anything.
No.
We have to purify and ready ourselves, and then
Yes.
it will just happen, right?
Yeah, one has to be otherwise ready. And
Yeah.
that readiness is revealed here. As I said in the very first verse, he says that all my delusion is gone.
Right. Yeah.
That is one readiness. The other readiness is recognition of that divinity, recognition of that greatness of that divinity.
Yeah.
So unless you have these two,
Right.
you are not ready.
Correct.
As you rightly put, you are not ready. So we need to be ready. Otherwise it can't be revealed. So even in this particular case, for a limited purpose, Sri Krishna raises the consciousness of Arjuna to receive that cosmic vision.
Correct.
Arjuna could not withstand it beyond a few moments. He could not withstand it because it was an artificially contrived vision given to him. It's not what he has developed it from inside. It was given for a limited purpose. I'll tell you the purpose. See, Sri Krishna, as I mentioned, today being Gita Jayanti, we need to understand he is everything. He is not only the Yogeshwara, but from a worldly point of view, he is a great strategist, a great tactician, a great diplomat, a fellow who would take so many people for a ride. He is the deceptor. He is the preceptor on one side and he is the deceptor on the other side.
Mm. Mm.
For those to whom he does not want to reveal himself, he will deceive them.
Mm. Mm.
So, see, everybody, see, a war is something which brings out the true nature of every fellow. Whether good or bad or ugly or courageous or valorous or whatever term you may use, it comes forth because of the crisis, because of the imminence of danger and death. Arjuna has his own hidden agenda. Sri Krishna has his own strategy. We'll come to it in this chapter. So we need to recognize that also. We need to realize that also.
Mm. But Krishna Paliji, one question is that, here we are talking of seeing, but we always talk of experiencing, right?
That seeing is, I told you, there is an outer seeing and an inner seeing.
Okay.
That is the reason why I said when some mathematical concept is explained to you and you understand it, how do you proclaim? You say, I see.
Hmm.
Is it that you have seen with your eyes? No. The concept has become clear in your mind. You have seen with the eye of your mind.
Okay.
Anuji has made a very pertinent point. He has put in the chat saying, realizing the limiting factor is so liberating. Very much true. I think this is a very good quote. So realizing the limiting factor itself is so liberating. In the sense, it gives you a sense of freedom. I have tied myself and entangled myself in so many ways. So to come to the understanding that I am entangled is the beginning of it, is the starting point of the whole movement towards freeing oneself. Thank you, Anuji, for that wonderful statement. See, that's why I say learning is always mutual. Unfortunately, I am somehow brought into the picture and all of you have asked me to talk about it. I am talking, but there could be so many from amongst you who are capable of seeing things in a different dimension. And that's the reason why I keep asking, please talk. Please come out with your, ideas. Please, there's nothing right or wrong or foolish or wise. It's only a question of perception.
So the other thing is that the human faculties that we have, like Arjuna was only able to see that only for a short while. He couldn't stand it, right? So is that because of the limitation of the human faculties?
Yes, he is still human and he is still not completely perfect.
Correct. Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, the whole Bhagavad Gita would not have been given.
Mm.
The starting of it is his lamentation.
Right.
His lamenting is the starting point because he was deluded. In the first chapter, he himself says that I am totally confused, bewildered, deluded. Please help me. Then when it comes to this chapter, he says, now my delusion has gone. Then Sri Krishna says, okay, you are at least partially ready to receive or to see this cosmic dimension of mine. Why am I revealing it to you? Because I have my own agenda. And why are you asking for it? You have your own agenda. After all these people are in the, their worldly outlook is they are all kings and rulers and emperors and warriors. And therefore, each one has got his own agenda. Each one has got his own agenda. That is bound to happen. So out of this, so much of collateral wisdom comes about. So something so mundane and so cruel and which has been going on for millennia, like wars, and we are not exempt from it even today. At least there are 100 places in the world where some kind of strife, war, struggle, these things are going on a grand scale. I'm not talking about small scale violence or something like that. Wars are going on. So so the out of this, something like the Bhagavad Gita has emerged. So we should be thankful for Arjuna in so many ways. But the only difference is, if he cried, Sri Krishna gave Bhagavad Gita. If you and I cry, nobody will give anything. Nothing will come out of it also. So that crying also, that lamenting and weeping and all that has to serve a purpose. Then only something divine will be revealed. Okay? So shall we close if there is there are no further observations or points for discussion?
Sajini.
Trupti ji has raised a hand. Yes,
Yes.
madam.
Yeah.
Should I? Are we
Yeah,
closing,
please.
or is there a
No,
question?
Trupti ji seems to have raised a hand, and maybe she wants to make a point. Yes.
No, I'm sorry, by mistake I raised my hand.
Okay, doesn't matter. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. If there's nothing much further, I think it's already 11:48. Thank you so much.
Right.
Avinash ji would like to say something. Okay. So I think Sajni ji, you can
Okay.
close it.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Krishnapani ji. We're really blessed that on this occasion of Gita Jayanti, we've had a class on Gita. Not only that, on Vishwarupa Darshana. So it's really, really very nice.
And as I
it's like a
mentioned-
blessing from Krishna himself when we
And-
started this. And I hope that someday we have, we are worthy enough to have that darshan.
All
So
of us.
these are baby steps towards that, I think. So
And as I
thank
said,
you.
today is Ekadashi and we have started the Ekadasha Adhyaya.
Right. Vaikunta Ekadashi. So let's hope that also takes us to Vaikunta sometime. So we really have started the day on a good note, and it's also Christmas. So Merry Christmas
Yes,
to
Merry
everyone
Christmas
when
to everybody.
Lord Jesus was born, a great avatar.
Yes.
So it's really, we are blessed to be having a satsang on this very, very special day.
Jesus is also, it is said that he is a word made flesh. The term word, the actual word used in the original this thing of St. John is logos. And that's the very first verse of the gospel according to St. John says, in the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God. So he is a personification of that ultimate reality. And we should strive to see that Christ principle is born in us again. That is what resurrection is. That Christ principle is born in us. That is true resurrection. So, Merry Christmas to everybody. And Sajni ji, sorry for my interference.
Please do. So thank you so much for adding this also about Jesus Christ. Very appropriate on Christmas. And we look forward to meeting you again on Sunday. So,
Yes.
Right, we have a session on Sunday that is at 10 o'clock. So all of you, please join. Now, we do have a lot of other programs. but as all of you are on our WhatsApp group, you will read them. I'd like to tell you that on the 31st and 1st, we have very nice programs. One is 31st with absolute gratitude. We close the year. And the next is with a lot of joy and hope. We begin the new year. So kindly join us for both the programs. We look forward to seeing you. And once again, happy Christmas and happy Gita Jayanti also. See you. Thank you, everyone.
Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Sajni ji, please.
Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Hari Om.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Meena ji, thank you.